Enjoy the convenience of 7 days a week banking and extended hours with Cube from First Arkansas Bank and Trust. Member FDIC.
Terry Prentice is standing by on the Brandon Moving and Storage Hotline. It's great to have him back on the show. For those of you who are not familiar with Terry, he's not only a former track star at the University of Arkansas, but he also has the coolest title at the University of Arkansas. Senior Associate Athletics Director for Athlete Brand Development and Inclusive Excellence. That is a mouthful. Terry, welcome back. Is there an acronym for your title? I don't even know. Is there one?
I haven't quite come up with one yet. I need to get with my buddy Kevin Trainer, and maybe he can come up with something.
Senior Athletic SAABD. I mean, there's just too many letters.
Sadimba?
Yeah, there's just too.
What do you tell everybody? I mean, surely you don't rattle off that title every time you introduce yourself.
Oh, I would.
I just say I'm Mr. NIL.
I like that better.
AD for NIL.
SADABD. SADABD is your acronym.
There's nothing sad about this, though.
No, it's a happy thing.
Most people know what NIL is, and it's funny. I was talking to Coach Hatfield, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago, and you know Coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's been in a lot of locker rooms and done it for a while. He was like, man, I pray for you on a daily basis. I appreciate that, Coach Hatfield. Thank you.
And I appreciate Coach Hatfield's prayers, too, if I could get in that list, too. But when I met you and we talked about the NIL, I was thinking you were going to be frantic, scattered, crazy busy. And you're just a cool customer. You're like, we had such a good plan that, I really don't feel, too stressed out about it. I mean, you guys had a great plan in advance. Obviously, you had a lot of conversations about this before everything kind of hit the fan. So if you would just kind of give us a walkthrough on that for those who didn't follow it from the beginning, how you got to the point where when it all was time, you guys were ready to roll.
Yeah, no, be happy to. It's definitely a team effort. When I came back to the U of A in March, and about a year prior, really when things started to shut down, and people started working from home, I know John Fagg and Will Landreth and a host of other people inside the department started thinking about name, image, and likeness, having meeting with the Walton College team, meeting with folks inside the athletic department, really just talking about how unique of an approach Arkansas could take on name, image, and likeness, and how this could maybe be a benefit to our student athletes. And so fast forward to March, I get on board. A lot of discussions have been had. A rough skeleton and outline of what we wanted our program to be had been put together, and I was really brought in to get in the trenches and put the logistics together and get this thing off the ground. And so that's really where we are. We decided we wanted to do all of our name, image, and likeness education in-house as opposed to other schools in the conference and around the country that have maybe hired a third party to meet with their student athletes or meet with them via video and conduct some workshops over Zoom and things along those lines, maybe come into town once a month or once every 2 months. We decided to go in a different direction and handle all this in-house, use the great resources through the Walton College of Business, great resources at the Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and have them pour into our student athletes because they know them, they're here, and they're a part of our community and have Arkansas's best interest in mind, as opposed to some of these other companies that are fantastic but work with 100,000 student athletes, right, or 30 or 40 different schools. We just wanted to have an approach that be unique to Arkansas. So that's what we are. We've been educating student athletes on entrepreneurship skills, influencer marketing, so learning what customers might want on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and all these other platforms. We've talked to them about taxes and about their responsibilities as businessmen and businesswomen if they want to enter into this NIL arena. We've talked to them about how to brand themselves if they're going out and doing private lessons or holding basketball camps or softball clinics and things along those lines. And then we've helped them with how to pitch themselves from a storytelling standpoint, right? No better representative for us in that regard so far than Grant Morgan, who seems to be really, really in tune with who he is and who his audience is, and man, he's taken off and had great success so far.
Do you have the numbers of how many student athletes have taken advantage of this yet? Is there a percentage or?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to share that. We're just over 100 student athletes at this point. We're roughly 6-ish weeks into NIL era. We've had a little over 100 student athletes take advantage of name, image, and likeness to the tune of about 164, maybe call it 165 different NIL opportunities, right? And that can range from somebody holding their own camp, as I mentioned, to somebody doing a radio spot for a local car dealership or a restaurant or things like that, to people being in commercials. We've really seen just about everything you can imagine, but there's still so many other possibilities, and I'm hearing a lot of creative ideas every day from our athletes, student athletes.
Joined by Terry Prentice on the Brandon Moving and Storage Hotline. If you're just tuning in, the SAADABDIE for the University of Arkansas, or for the U of A if you prefer.
Or Mr. NIL.
Or Mr. NIL. It's a lot catchier. You know what? I'm going to do it. Let me just X this out. So how involved are you guys in each deal? Like, are you directly involved in each deal to approve it, sign off on it? Is that required, or how does that work?
Yeah, and we've based all of our policy off of the state law that goes into effect January 1st. So Arkansas Student Athlete Publicity Rights Act clearly states student athletes have to disclose to the university, and so we've come up with a policy that student athletes have to inform us at least 72 hours before they enter into that name, image, and likeness agreement. And the same goes for those student athletes that have representation, whether an attorney or an agent or a PR firm that's working with them. They have a duty to disclose that to us 48 hours before they enter into that relationship officially. And our student athletes have been great about that thus far. In terms of approving, we really look for a few different things. Really just need to make sure that there's actual work being performed, right? There has to be a quid pro quo. So, a few of the things that I've explained to our student athletes, but also the business owners that have inquired, we got to know the name of the company, the industry that they're in, and then the terms for the student athlete being asked to do. How long is this agreement going to be in effect? Is it a one-time thing? Is it 2 months, 6 months? Is it a full year? And then, what type of compensation are they going to receive? Is it free merchandise, free apparel, gift cards, things along those lines, or is it checks, cash, things like that? And then finally, the actual dollar amount. Those are really the basic things that our student athletes are required to disclose to us. But then from there, I'm not an agent. I'm not involved in the nitty gritty and brokering NIL deals or agreements on behalf of our student athletes. But we do provide them with a hefty amount of education ahead of time, and we talk through some things, right? Like to have a one-on-one relationship with all of our student athletes and talk through some things and maybe think through best practices. But generally, when they bring me an agreement, at that point, it's close to the finish line and essentially done. And we just sign off on it to make sure that those things are in effect, right? There's actual work being performed. And again, that could be lessons or going to speak to somebody's board meeting or doing a quick autograph signing or things like that. We just have to make sure that we stay in good standing from that regard and following our future state law and the policies the NCAA has set forth for us.
Has there been something where you had to say, no, we can't sign off on that? You can't do that?
No, thankfully we haven't gotten to that point yet. I don't think anyone's brought an alcohol deal to the table or wanted to do something with a pharmaceutical company or anything like that. Those things are outlined in the state law. So no, thankfully we haven't had to say no to some things. We've had to have a student athlete maybe push back and let's say an agreement said, hey, during every week of the football season, we need you to do X, Y, and Z. Well, we've had the student athlete or the representative go back to the business and say, hey, just instead of listing the Razorbacks and having us be directly implicated in the agreement, go ahead and list out September the 4th, 11th, the 17th. Yeah, list out the game date. Mm-hmm. And those things have been really, really easy to communicate, and everyone's been very understanding. So thus far, no issues at this point. I'm going to go ahead and knock on wood, but I certainly would have my work cut out for me.
Well, I got to think most of these folks who are trying to get endorsements done by student athletes have a reasonable expectation and understanding of what is going to be allowed and what won't. I mean, it's pretty commonsensical, most of it. Some of it may feel a little more restrictive than you think is commonsensical, but I think people are pretty understanding of that. This is going to call for a little conjecture, Terry. I'm curious, from what you're seeing, just generally speaking, what's more important, social media presence as far as number of followers, things of that nature, or their creativity on social media, or their personalities as far as, maybe being a great communicator, somebody who's got a great personality? There's a number of athletes that certainly come to mind in that regard. What are you finding is the most attractive so far to potential companies signing off for endorsements?
Seems to be the latter, right? I really do. At least it seems that way, and it feels that way. In that, companies, businesses, brands, and these could be national brands too, right? They're looking for the person that's really engaged with their audience, right? And that's what we helped our student athletes understand. Let's look at your engagement rate on Instagram or Twitter or some of these other platforms, or what's unique about you, right? And Trey Knox, right? I know he made a lot of headlines, but Trey Knox is really unique in that he loves his dog, and if you look at his Instagram feed, you kind of see a pattern, right? In terms of him loving his sport, him loving his family, him loving his pets, him loving all types of different things. So we've really tried to make sure our student athletes understand you've got to be unique and you've got to be authentic, be yourself. And it's about those that engage with you rather than just having sheer numbers of followers. Although those don't hurt.
Sure.
Those definitely don't hurt. But yeah, it's the latter for sure.
Have you seen any warning signs nationally? It's like, oh, nobody probably thought about that. That could be a problem. Anything you're seeing nationally that is concerning to you?
I think the time commitment more than anything else, right? I mean, we tell everybody this is another piece of the student-athlete experience, right? It's not the most important part of your journey as a Razorback student-athlete, but it's something else that you can do now, but you still have to go to class and perform well academically so that you can compete in your sport. And then, honestly, you still want to go out there and compete for SEC and national championships with your teammates. So that should certainly be, at the top of your mind. And then, there's community service, there's a social life that you want to have. And then there's native and likeness where you're essentially allowed to work out, whether it be limited duties and responsibilities or some basic things that you've got to do. So I think the time commitment, we all talked about it, but seeing it in real time and seeing our student athletes have to have drafts due for Instagram post that they have to put up, or a TikTok video, or go up to a video shoot at a particular business. Those things just take time, and seems like so far that our student athletes are figuring out, where their priorities lie and what's most important to them. Particularly as football, I use for instance, gets into fall camp. Those guys are locked in on that now, and the coaches have been great in helping us kind of find that balance.
Terry Prentice joining us on the Brandon Moving and Storage Hotline, talking NIL. Let me follow up with that on the BYU story that came out recently. And it's one of those deals where it's like, oh, that's so great. These guys who weren't on scholarship are now getting their school paid for. But at the same time, it seems to me to open up a bit of a Pandora's box where you have a high-profile, high-money or large money company coming in and basically underwriting scholarships, in effect, for non-scholarship players. I don't know what would preclude any other school from following suit. Did you see the story? Am I not understanding this correctly? What would prevent other schools from doing this, which basically, in effect, sort of flaunts the 85 scholarship limit?
Yeah, no, I definitely did see the story and was made aware of it and picked it up and read through it all. Really nothing stopping any company out there from wanting to round up a group of student athletes and engage with them and find whatever is the right fit for that student athlete. I think the biggest thing I'd want, businesses or other people to know, the branding of that was that they're all going to be paid for their tuition, which is great. I certainly am happy for those young people. But the biggest thing you just have to know is what's being done in return. And honestly, maybe not we're paying your tuition. The sell is you're being given whatever the amount was, $3,000. And what you do with that, you will. But if it goes towards your tuition, then so be it. But no, I think that's definitely opening Pandora's box, and it's certainly a possibility, and something that's the reality of where we are right now, right, in this new era of NIL, in that, business can go out and round up quite a few student athletes and do something similar, in that regard.
Well, John on Asher Record Live Fan Feedback just made a great point, too. You look at schools that are grossly underfunded, especially those that are very successful, that have programs that are underfunded, such as, let's look at Razorback Baseball. You're still only allowed a certain amount of scholarships. It's a nationally, prominent program. You've got a program that is one of the few that make money, and I'm sure Dave Van Horn would like to have a few more scholarships to work with. And, again, you can sort of skirt the rules, and we all think it's underfunded, but you can kind of skirt that by going through this. So, anyway, it does. I think it's an interesting thing, and I'm curious to see how other schools respond going forward with this and being able to take advantage of that particular angle on this.
Definitely. It's again, like you had said, it's Pandora's box. We're going to continue to monitor and evolve as we go along. That's the biggest thing with all this being so new. We just have to remain flexible, right? Flexible and open and just understand where we are so that we're not caught flat-footed. But then honestly, like I've always come back to, do what's in the best interest of the University of Arkansas and the state of Arkansas and our 19 sports programs.
You mentioned Drew Morgan. I think our listeners are very familiar with Devo as well. And there are other high-profile male athletes I think that are going to be in pretty big-time demand. What are you seeing? Oh, did I say Drew? Yeah, Grant Morgan. Well, Drew Morgan would have been a high commodity at the time too. Sorry,
I'm sure.
The whole Morgan family.
Shout out.
Yeah, but sorry. Thanks, Wes, for trying to help me. But what about the female athletes, student athletes? What are you seeing there? Any particular sport or any particular player that has drummed up a little more attention than others?
Yeah, no. I've seen our gymnasts really take to it. And again, that comes with the territory. They're used to presenting and performing and doing things along those lines. But gymnastics has taken to it. Maybe they're a little less active on Twitter and more active on Instagram and TikTok and some of these other platforms that I'd mentioned before, because it seems like that's where more of their opportunities are coming, or where they like to put their opportunities for people to see. Volleyball, I know, they're having success with private lessons and camps and things like that. Softball, women's basketball, we've had a few student athletes that have really hit the ground running in that area, and I think there'll be some bigger news that'll be coming out over the next couple of weeks and months from those areas. So it's been pretty equitable so far. If I'm being quite honest, I want to say, the split isn't exactly 50-50, but our female student athletes are having ample opportunities and really even more creative when it comes to what they think they can use their NIL to do. We've seen it across the board. 16 of our 19 sports have had at least one student athlete do something from an NIL standpoint or take advantage of monetizing their NIL. And so that's been really refreshing to see so far. But yeah, it's been pretty widespread. And I think we'll continue to see more and do our best to celebrate our student athletes when they go out and have success in this new area.
I was going back and I was reading the BYU story, and the story says that the university's athletic department helped set up this deal. Can you do that? Or is it maybe the story's wrong? Can you guys help broker deals? Can you go out and find a deal or suggest a deal? How much can you guys in the department help?
Yeah, so we're a little limited. What I will say is that specific to BYU, I know Utah doesn't have a state law. So at this point, they're really coming up with their own departmental policy and taking their own interpretation. That's part of the Pandora's box with NIL, and that there's 50 different states out there, and there's 50 different laws or policies or interpretations. There's really no federal mandate or rule. The NCAA hadn't come out and actually had a one-size-fits-all rule from an NIL standpoint. So to answer your question, we're limited to what we can do at this point, but we'll continue to evolve. But at this point, no, our coaches, our staff, we're not going out brokering opportunities and deals for our student athletes. However, we are, and I think we tried to set the table with this, set the foundation, been on the forefront of embracing this, and would hope that all of our folks in the business community around the state and in the region know that this is something that we're certainly welcome to, and we're not running from it. So no, we're not going out and brokering, but I think we create the environment publicly and internally with our own student athletes that would make them believe, hey, we want you to go and take advantage of these things if that's what you want to do. But to this point, no, we're not involved in the brokering of the NIL deals.
Terry, you got enough problems to solve in your official role at Arkansas, but as a former track athlete at the university, I'm curious if you have an opinion as to what in the world is going on with USA Track. And I am a huge fan of the sprinting, no offense to the guys who run the longer distances, but when the 4x1 team fails to capture gold in consecutive Olympics or world championships, it makes me very unhappy. What is going on with track and field in the United States? Anything that can fix this thing easily other than working on batons, handoffs, and things?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are a few dynamics at play. Every year when the relay comes up, we have a history of dropping the baton in the Olympics and in the World Championships, and it's something that definitely needs to be corrected. I mean, we're having a ton of success domestically. Our sprinters are on top of the world. Our long jumpers are great. Our hurdlers are great. But when it comes down to that time once every 4 years, it seems like we have an issue getting the stick around the track. So, I'd love to get into it at some other point to talk about the internal politics when it comes to picking who's on the relay. But you've got different teams that run the prelims versus the finals. Some of these other countries will run one team in 2 rounds, and they have some synergy and some things the stars can get out there, 6 or 7 different people as opposed to just 4. So I'll let Coach Buckman specifically answer that, or Coach Harder specifically answer that. Being that they're the guys that actually do it on a day-to-day basis, but just from the outside looking in, man, we've got to figure out what these other countries are doing right. One of those is probably running the same lineup in both rounds and get synergy. There's
just certain things I count on the United States to be great at, and that is one of them. I mean, I just expect us to dominate in 4x1. It really makes me upset when they don't win. So,
we do put the 4 fastest out there, but it's got to actually get the baton around the track.
I'm like, okay, Bolt's done now. It's ours to win. Cakewalk. Jamaica, you're going to have to take a back seat this time. Sorry, guess not.
Exactly.
Stinks. Anyway, Terry, great stuff. Thanks for the insight. I appreciate it. We'll be talking again, I'm sure, down the road here.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Take care. That is Terry Prentice, NIL guy, as he wants to be known.
NIL.
Mr. NIL.